I feel the weight of my stethoscope against my chest as I walk down the sterile corridor of St. Elysium Hospital, the familiar hum of fluorescent lights mixing with the distant beeping of monitors. The night shift always carries a different energy, quieter, more intimate, like the hospital itself is holding its breath. My sneakers squeak against the polished linoleum, and I catch the scent of disinfectant layered over something else, something metallic that makes my stomach tighten. After 3 years working these halls, I thought I knew every smell, every sound, every shadow that danced across the walls when the lights dimmed. Tonight feels different. Tonight, the shadows seem deeper. I push through the double doors to the surgical prep area, my badge swaying against my hip. The room should be empty at this hour, but I can hear voices, low, urgent whispers that stop the moment my footsteps echo across the threshold. Two surgical technicians, Jenkins and Martinez, freeze beside a metal cart laden with instruments that gleam under the harsh overhead lights. "Evening," I say, forcing my voice to sound casual despite the way my pulse quickens. Something about their posture, the way Martinez's hand hovers protectively over a covered tray, sets my nerves on edge. Jenkins clears his throat, his face pale in the fluorescent glare. "Just finishing up the inventory, Nurse Collins." I nod, but my eyes drift to the instruments on their cart. The scalpels catch the light, their edges sharp and clean, but there's something wrong with them. Subtle scratches along the handles, microscopic nicks that shouldn't exist on sterile, single-use tools. My training kicks in, years of protocol and safety procedures flooding my mind. "Are those the disposables from today's surgeries?" I ask, stepping closer. The metallic scent grows stronger, almost overwhelming now. Martinez shifts uncomfortably, his latex gloves creaking as he adjusts his grip on the cart handle. "Standard cleanup, you know how it is." But I do know how it is, and this isn't it. Those instruments should have been destroyed hours ago, incinerated according to hospital protocol. Instead, they're here, cleaned and polished. Ready for what? My mouth goes dry as the implications settle in my chest like a cold weight. "I need to see the disposal logs," I hear myself say, my voice steadier than I feel. The two men exchange a glance that lasts too long, loaded with meaning I can't decipher. Jenkins forces a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. "Come on, Raine. You know paperwork's not our strong suit. Everything's handled properly." The way he says my name, familiar and dismissive, makes my skin crawl. I've worked alongside these men for months, shared coffee breaks, and complained about difficult patients. But now they feel like strangers. The room seems to grow colder, the air thick with tension that makes it hard to breathe. I take another step forward, close enough now to see the cart clearly. Among the surgical tools, I spot something that makes my heart stop. A blood collection bag, supposedly empty but showing traces of dark residue around the seal. Fresh residue. My hands begin to tremble as pieces of a puzzle I don't want to solve start clicking into place. "Where did this blood go?" I whisper, pointing at the bag. Martinez's jaw tightens. "Look, Nurse Collins, maybe you should focus on your own responsibilities." The threat in his voice is subtle but unmistakable, wrapped in professional courtesy that feels more dangerous than outright hostility. I back away from the cart, my heart hammering against my ribs as I realize I've stumbled onto something I was never meant to see. The hospital around me suddenly feels foreign, transformed from a place of healing into something else entirely. I leave the prep room on unsteady legs, my mind racing as I try to process what I've witnessed. The corridor stretches ahead of me, longer than it seemed before, filled with shadows that seem to move independently of the flickering lights. Every door I pass could be hiding more secrets, more evidence of whatever system I've accidentally uncovered. Back at the nurse's station, I pull up the computer records, my fingers flying across the keyboard as I search for surgical schedules, inventory reports, anything that might explain what I saw. But the deeper I dig, the more questions multiply. Surgeries performed without patient admission records, blood draws that disappear from the system, supply orders that don't match usage reports. The pattern emerges slowly, like a photograph developing in a dark room, and with each new detail, my fear transforms into something harder, more determined. Patients are being put at risk, protocols violated, and everyone seems to be looking the other way. The weight of my nursing oath presses against my conscience. First, do no harm. I spend the rest of my shift documenting everything I can find, taking screenshots and printing reports when the system allows. By dawn, I have a folder thick with evidence, each page another piece of proof that something corrupt has taken root in the place where I've dedicated my career to helping people heal. 3 days later, I sit in the administrator's office, the folder clutched in my sweating palms as I wait for someone in authority to take my concerns seriously. The office smells of leather and coffee, a stark contrast to the antiseptic hospital floors below. When Dr. Patricia Webb finally arrives, her expression already suggests this meeting is an inconvenience. "Nurse Collins," she says, settling behind her desk without looking at my carefully prepared documentation. "I understand you have some concerns about our procedures." I slide the folder across her desk, my voice steady despite the way my heart races. "I have evidence of serious protocol violations, surgical instruments being reused, blood products going missing, procedures performed without proper documentation." Dr. Webb opens the folder, her eyes scanning the pages with practiced disinterest. After what feels like hours but is probably only minutes, she closes it and looks at me with a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "I appreciate your diligence, Nurse Collins. However, I think you may be misinterpreting some fairly routine administrative processes. Medical facilities have complex systems that can seem confusing to staff who aren't involved in the operational side." The dismissal hits me like a physical blow. "Ma'am, these aren't administrative errors. Patients could be at risk." "I understand your concerns," she continues, her tone growing cooler. "But making unfounded accusations against your colleagues isn't helpful to anyone. Perhaps you need some time to refocus on your primary responsibilities." I leave her office with my folder tucked under my arm and a growing certainty that the corruption runs deeper than I initially suspected. The elevator ride down to my floor feels endless, each floor that passes marking another level of institutional failure. When the doors finally open, I step into the familiar corridor with the crushing realization that I'm truly alone in this fight. That evening, I receive a message requesting my presence on the hospital rooftop for what's described as a mentorship meeting with CEO Dr. Victor Bell. The timing feels deliberate, calculated, and as I ride the elevator to the top floor, I can't shake the feeling that I'm walking into a trap. The rooftop is bathed in the orange glow of New Orleans streetlights, the city sprawling below us like a living organism. Dr. Bell stands near the edge, his hands clasped behind his back as he surveys the urban landscape. When he turns to face me, there's something in his eyes that makes my blood run cold, a gleam that catches the fluorescent security lights in a way that seems almost inhuman. "Nurse Collins," he says, his voice smooth and measured. "I understand you've been asking a lot of questions lately." I force myself to stand straighter, drawing on every ounce of courage I possess. "I have concerns about patient safety, Dr. Bell." He moves closer, and I catch a scent that reminds me of copper pennies and something else I can't identify. Patient safety is our top priority, of course, but sometimes zealous staff members can become confused about the complexities of modern medicine. The way he emphasizes certain words feels like a code I'm not equipped to break. The wind picks up, carrying with it the sounds of the city below. Car horns, distant music, the pulse of life continuing while I stand 20 stories above it all, facing something I don't understand. I know what I saw, I say, proud that my voice doesn't waver. Dr. Bell's smile is sharp, predatory. Do you? The mind can play tricks, especially when someone is under stress. Perhaps you need a vacation, some time to reconsider your perspective. The threat is unmistakable now, wrapped in concern that feels more dangerous than outright intimidation. I realize that my carefully documented evidence means nothing if the people in power are committed to maintaining whatever system I've uncovered. I care about this hospital, I tell him, one last attempt to reach whatever humanity might exist beneath his cold exterior. And we care about you, Nurse Collins, which is why I'm advising you, as a mentor, as someone who wants to see you succeed, to let sleeping dogs lie. Some knowledge is more burden than blessing. You're safer not knowing what keeps this city alive. The words hang in the air between us, loaded with implications I can feel, but not fully grasp. As he speaks, the security lights above us flicker, casting his face in alternating shadow and harsh illumination. For just a moment, his eyes seem to glow red in the fluorescent glare, and I have to grip the rooftop railing to keep from stepping backward. Think carefully about your next steps, he continues, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. St. Elysium has been part of this community for over a century. It will continue long after any individual staff member moves on. I leave the rooftop with legs that barely support me, my mind reeling from the encounter. In the elevator, I catch my reflection in the polished metal doors, pale, shaken, but with something new burning in my eyes. The fear is still there, but it's being consumed by something stronger. Determination. Whatever is happening at St. Elysium, whatever system of corruption I've stumbled into, it ends with me. I may not understand the full scope of what I'm facing, but I know right from wrong. I know that patients deserve better than whatever shadowy compromise has infected this place. As I walk through the hospital corridors toward the parking garage, every shadow seems deeper, every sound more ominous. But I'm no longer walking away from the truth. I'm walking toward whatever comes next, whatever it takes to expose the rot that's taken hold of my workplace. I reach my car as the first hints of dawn touch the New Orleans skyline. The folder of evidence sits on my passenger seat, and I know that tomorrow I'll have to find another way to make someone listen. The system may be designed to protect itself, but I refuse to be complicit in whatever darkness has taken root here. For the first time in my nursing career, I realize I can't do this alone. But I also know, with a certainty that surprises me, that I won't stop trying. Whatever Dr. Bell meant by his cryptic warning, whatever keeps this city alive, I'm going to... The elevator doors slide shut behind me with a soft whisper, cutting off Dr. Bell's final words that hang in my mind like smoke. My hands shake as I press the button for the ground floor, and I can still feel the weight of his gaze, those eyes that seem to glow red in the security lights. The metallic taste of fear coats my tongue, but underneath it burns something else, a resolve that surprises me with its intensity. I need help, real help, and I know exactly where to find it. The parking garage beneath St. Elysium feels like a tomb at this hour, concrete pillars casting long shadows under flickering fluorescent tubes. My footsteps echo off the low ceiling as I make my way to my Honda Civic, parked in the same spot I've used for 3 years. But tonight, even this familiar space feels hostile, transformed by my new understanding of what lurks within these walls. I slide into the driver's seat and grip the steering wheel, my knuckles white against the worn leather. The folder of evidence sits on the passenger seat like an accusation, each page representing another patient put at risk by whatever system I've uncovered. The weight of it presses against my chest, making it hard to breathe. Marco's bakery sits 3 blocks from the hospital, a warm beacon in the pre-dawn darkness. I've been going there for coffee since my first week at St. Elysium, drawn by the genuine smile of the owner and the way his espresso cuts through the longest shifts. Marco Valeni, a bear of a man with gentle hands and eyes that see everything. I've always suspected there's more to him than flour and coffee beans, but I've never cared enough to ask. Tonight, I need more than caffeine. The bakery's windows glow golden against the empty street, and I can see Marco's silhouette moving behind the counter, preparing for the morning rush. The bell above the door chimes as I enter, and the scent of fresh bread envelops me like a warm embrace. For a moment, the tension in my shoulders eases. "Raine," Marco says, looking up from a tray of croissants. His smile fades when he sees my face. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I laugh, but it comes out hollow. "Something like that." He pours me a cup of coffee without asking, the same dark roast I order every morning, but instead of handing it across the counter, he comes around to where I'm standing, his expression growing serious as he studies my face. "Sit," he says, gesturing to a small table in the corner. "Tell me what's wrong." The kindness in his voice breaks something loose inside me. Before I can stop myself, the whole story spills out. The reused instruments, the missing blood products, Dr. Webb's dismissal, Dr. Bell's veiled threats on the rooftop. Marco listens without interruption, his dark eyes never leaving my face. When I finish, silence stretches between us. The coffee grows cold in my hands as I wait for him to tell me I'm paranoid, that I'm seeing connections where none exist. Instead, he leans back in his chair and exhales slowly. "How long have you been coming here, Raine?" The question surprises me. 3 years? Maybe a little more. Why? In all that time, you've never asked me about my family, about what I did before I started making bread. Something in his tone makes my pulse quicken. "Marco, my grandfather came to New Orleans in 1952, he continues, his voice quiet but steady. He wasn't a baker. Neither was my father. But this city, it has a way of changing people, of offering them chances to become something different." I set down my coffee cup, the ceramic clicking against the saucer. "What are you saying?" Marco's smile is sad, weighted with years I can only guess at. "I'm saying that sometimes, the people who look the most ordinary are the ones best equipped to handle extraordinary problems." He stands and walks to the front window, pulling down the shade with deliberate care. When he turns back to me, there's something different in his posture, a subtle shift that makes him seem larger, more dangerous. "You think Dr. Bell threatened you tonight," he says. "But what if I told you that what you witnessed at the hospital, the blood, the procedures, the secrecy, what if it's not about money or malpractice?" My mouth goes dry. "Then what is it about?" "Survival. For things that shouldn't exist but do." The words hit me like a physical blow. I think of Dr. Bell's eyes glowing red in the fluorescent light, the way the shadows seem to move independently around him, the metallic scent that follows certain staff members through the corridors, the patients who arrive in the dead of night and disappear before dawn. "You're talking about vampires," I whisper, barely believing the words as they leave my lips. Marco nods slowly. "St. Elysium isn't just a hospital, Raine. It's a feeding ground. The Crimson Circle. They're a syndicate of rogue immortals who've been using medical facilities to harvest blood and cover their tracks. They've been operating in this city for decades." I stand abruptly, my chair scraping against the tile floor. "This is insane. Vampires don't exist. They're folklore? Fantasy?" Marco's voice is gentle but firm. "A week ago, you would have said the same thing about hospital administrators threatening staff on rooftops. But here we are." The evidence folder feels heavier in my hands as I clutch it against my chest. Everything I've documented, Every violation and discrepancy suddenly takes on a darker meaning. The missing blood isn't being sold on the black market, it's being consumed. The unauthorized procedures aren't about cutting costs, they're about covering supernatural tracks. Why are you telling me this? I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Marco moves closer, and I catch a scent I've never noticed before. Something wild and protective, like storm clouds gathering. Because you're in danger, and because you're the first person in years brave enough to ask the right questions, the Crimson Circle doesn't tolerate threats to their operation. Then I should run, leave the city, find another job. They'll find you, he says simply. These aren't ordinary predators, Raine. They have resources, connections, centuries of experience hunting people who know too much. The walls of the bakery seem to close in around me as the full scope of my situation becomes clear. I've stumbled into something ancient and deadly, armed with nothing but a folder of paperwork and a desperate desire to do the right thing. So what do? I ask, hating how small my voice sounds. Marco's expression softens. You let me help you. My family, we've had dealings with their kind before. Not all vampires are part of the circle. Some follow older codes, older ways. There's one in particular who might be interested in what you've discovered. Another vampire? The word still feels foreign on my tongue. Not just any vampire. Gabriel Draven, the vampire king of New Orleans. He's been fighting the circle for longer than you've been alive. If anyone can protect you while we gather the evidence needed to bring them down, it's him. I sink back into my chair, overwhelmed by the impossibility of what I'm hearing. Yesterday, my biggest concern was whether I'd get the weekend shift I wanted. Now I'm being offered protection by a vampire king to help expose a supernatural conspiracy. I need time to think, I manage. Marco nods. Take all the time you need, but don't take too long. The circle doesn't forgive, and they don't forget. I leave the bakery as the sun begins to rise over New Orleans, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that seem too beautiful for the darkness I've uncovered. The city awakens around me, delivery trucks rumbling past, early commuters emerging from apartment buildings, the familiar rhythm of life continuing as if nothing has changed. But everything has changed. My understanding of the world, my sense of safety, my belief in the fundamental goodness of the place where I've dedicated my career, all of it has been shattered and rebuilt in the space of a single conversation. I drive home through streets that look the same but feel different, populated by shadows that could be hiding anything. At every red light, I find myself scanning the sidewalks for figures that move too smoothly, eyes that reflect light in ways that human eyes shouldn't. My apartment feels like a sanctuary when I finally close the door behind me and turn the deadbolt. I set the evidence folder on my kitchen table and stare at it for a long time, trying to reconcile the mundane bureaucratic violations with Marco's revelation about supernatural predators. The smart thing would be to burn it all, pack my bags, and disappear. Find a quiet hospital in a small town where the biggest conspiracy involves someone stealing lunches from the staff refrigerator. But as I flip through the pages, I see faces, patients I've cared for, colleagues I've trusted, the vulnerable people who depend on St. Elysium for healing. I can't abandon them to whatever the Crimson Circle has planned. That afternoon, I return to the hospital for my scheduled shift with new eyes. Every staff member becomes a potential threat, every shadowy corner a possible hiding place for predators. The familiar sounds of monitors and conversations take on sinister undertones, and I find myself studying the faces of patients who arrive without family, without history, without explanation. During my dinner break, I encounter Dr. Bell in the elevator. He's impeccably dressed as always, his silver hair perfectly styled. But now I notice details that escaped me before. The way his skin seems too pale under the fluorescent lights. How his movements are unnaturally fluid. the fact that I've never seen him eat or drink anything during his years at the hospital. Nurse Collins, he says as the elevator climbs toward the cardiac unit. I trust you've had time to consider our conversation. I force myself to meet his gaze, fighting every instinct that screams at me to look away. I have. And? I've decided to focus on my patients, I say carefully. My primary responsibilities, as you suggested. His smile is sharp, predatory. Excellent. I knew you were a sensible woman. But as the elevator doors open and I step into the corridor, I catch his reflection in the polished metal, or rather, the absence of it. Where Dr. Bell should be standing, there's only empty space. My hands are shaking as I make my way to the nurse's station, but my resolve has never been stronger. Whatever supernatural forces I'm facing, whatever ancient predators have made my workplace their hunting ground, I will not be complicit in their crimes. That night, I return to Marco's bakery just before closing time. He's alone, cleaning flour from the industrial mixer with methodical precision. When he sees me, he nods as if he's been expecting me. I'll do it, I say, without preamble. I'll meet with your vampire king. Marco sets down his cleaning rag and studies my face. What changed your mind? I saw Dr. Bell's reflection in the elevator, or didn't see it. I take a shaky breath. If I'm going to fight monsters, I need to understand what I'm fighting. Gabriel doesn't give his protection lightly, Marco warns. He'll want to know everything. What you've seen, what you suspect, what you're willing to risk. I'm willing to risk everything, I say, surprised by the certainty in my voice. These people trusted me to keep them safe. I won't let them down. Marco nods slowly. Then we meet him tomorrow night. Neutral ground. St. Louis Cathedral. After midnight. He'll be waiting. I spend the next day in a haze of nervous energy, going through the motions of my shift while my mind races with questions and fears. Every patient interaction feels precious. Every moment of normalcy, a gift I may never experience again. By the time my shift ends, I've made peace with whatever comes next. The cathedral looms against the night sky like something from another century, its spires reaching toward stars that seem dimmer than they should. Marco waits for me at the entrance, his usual gentle demeanor replaced by something harder, more protective. Remember, he says as we climb the stone steps, Gabriel Draven is old, powerful, and dangerous, but he's also honorable. If you're honest with him, he'll be honest with you. The cathedral doors open silently at our approach, revealing an interior lit only by candles. The scent of incense hangs heavy in the air, mixing with something else. Something wild and ancient that makes my skin prickle with awareness. He's waiting in the front pew, a figure so still he could be carved from marble. When he turns to face us, I understand immediately why he's called a king. Gabriel Draven radiates authority like heat from a forge, his pale eyes holding centuries of experience and pain. You're the nurse, he says, his voice carrying a slight accent I can't place. The one who's been asking inconvenient questions. I force myself to walk closer, though every instinct screams at me to run. I'm Raine Collins. I work at St. Elysium Hospital. Worked, he corrects softly. After tonight, that life is over. The question is what life you choose to begin. The finality in his words should terrify me, but instead, I feel a strange sense of relief. The pretense is over. The careful dance of denial and doubt finally ended. I want to stop them, I say simply, whatever the cost. Gabriel's smile is sharp but not unkind. The cost will be higher than you imagine. The Crimson Circle has roots throughout this city's power structure: medical, legal, political. They've been feeding here for decades, building a network of influence that protects their operations. Then how do we fight them? We? He tilts his head, studying me with those ancient eyes. What makes you think you have anything to offer in this war? The question stings, but I force myself to answer honestly. Because I understand their system. I know how hospitals work, what records to look for, which violations will bring federal investigators. You might be immortal, but you still need someone who understands mortal bureaucracy. Gabriel laughs, a sound like wind through autumn leaves. Spoken like a true nurse, practical to the end. He stands, moving with fluid grace toward the altar. Very well, Raine Collins. I accept your partnership. But understand this. Once you commit to this path, there is no going back. The circle will hunt you until one of you is destroyed. I think of all the patients I've failed to protect, all the violations I've documented but couldn't stop. They're already hunting me. At least this way, I'm hunting them back. Then we begin tomorrow night. Marco will bring you to my estate, where you'll have access to resources the circle cannot touch. In return, you'll help me document every crime, every violation, every piece of evidence needed to bring them down through both mortal and immortal justice. As we leave the cathedral, I catch sight of my reflection in the stained glass. Windows, pale, determined, transformed by the weight of what I've accepted. The woman who entered this building was a nurse concerned about protocol violations. The woman leaving is a soldier in a war I'm only beginning to understand. The streets of New Orleans stretch before us, familiar and foreign at once. Somewhere in this city, the Crimson Circle continues their ancient feeding, secure in their belief that no mortal would dare challenge them. They're about to discover how wrong they are. I have allies now. A vampire king with centuries of rage, and a baker who understands the weight of family honor. Together, we'll gather the evidence needed to tear down their operation, piece by careful piece. The war for the soul of St. Elysium Hospital has begun, and I intend to win it. Over the next 2 weeks, my life transforms completely. During the day, I maintain my cover at the hospital, documenting every suspicious activity with new understanding of what I'm actually witnessing. At night, I meet with Gabriel and Marco, planning our assault on the Circle's operations. Gabriel's estate sits in the Garden District like something from another era, surrounded by wrought iron gates and ancient oak trees that seem to whisper secrets in the wind. Inside, I find a library that spans centuries, filled with documents and records that chronicle the supernatural history of New Orleans. The Circle arrived in 1847, Gabriel explains as we review historical records by lamplight. They posed as doctors during the yellow fever epidemic, using the crisis to establish their feeding operation. St. Elysium was built on the site of their first facility. The revelation makes my skin crawl. How many people have they killed? Thousands over the decades. But they're careful, never taking enough from any individual to cause suspicion, always maintaining the facade of legitimate medical practice. His pale eyes reflect the lamplight like mirrors. Until now, no one has had both the access and the courage to challenge them. I spend my nights learning about vampire politics, about the ancient laws that govern supernatural communities, about Gabriel's own history as a king trying to bring order to chaos. The more I understand, the more I realize how impossible our task seems. But impossible doesn't mean wrong. During one particularly productive evening, I managed to access Dr. Bell's personal computer system, downloading financial records that show massive discrepancies between official hospital budgets and actual expenses. The money is being funneled somewhere, but the trail disappears into a maze of shell companies and offshore accounts. Blood money, Gabriel says when I show him the findings. They're selling what they don't consume, building a financial empire on stolen life force. The evidence folder grows thicker each night, filled with documentation that would destroy the Circle if presented to the right authorities. But we need more than financial crimes. We need proof of the supernatural elements that make this conspiracy truly monstrous. That proof comes from an unexpected source. I'm working the late shift when I hear crying from the pediatric ward. Following the sound, I find a small girl in room 314, maybe 7 years old, with pale skin and dark circles under her eyes that speak of serious illness. Her chart identifies her as Luna Draven, a name that makes my breath catch. Are you related to Gabriel Draven? I ask gently as I check her vitals. She nods, tears streaming down her thin cheeks. He's my daddy, but he can't visit during the day because of his condition. The pieces fall into place with horrible clarity. Luna is Gabriel's daughter, suffering from some kind of blood disorder that requires regular transfusions. The Circle has been using her as leverage against him, keeping her sick and dependent on their medical care to ensure his compliance. How long have you been here, sweetheart? Forever, she whispers. The doctors say I'm special, that I need medicine only they can give me. But it hurts, and I'm always so tired. I study her chart more carefully, noting the unusual medication regimen and the fact that her attending physician is Dr. Bell himself. Whatever they're giving her, it's not healing her. It's keeping her weak, dependent, trapped. Would you like me to call your daddy? I ask. Her eyes light up for the first time since I entered the room. Could you? He said he'd come if I really needed him, but the doctor said I shouldn't bother him. That night, I break every rule I've sworn to uphold. I call Gabriel from the hospital phone, speaking in code we've developed for emergencies. The package you've been waiting for is ready for pickup, I tell him. His voice is sharp with concern. Are you certain? Very certain. Room 314, pediatric ward. She's been asking for you. Within an hour, the entire hospital seems to hold its breath. Security guards move through the corridors with nervous energy, and I catch glimpses of staff members gathered in urgent conversations that stop whenever I approach. Something is coming. Something that has the Circle genuinely frightened. Gabriel arrives just before midnight, moving through the hospital like a force of nature. He doesn't sneak or hide. He simply walks through the front entrance as if he owns the building, his presence bending reality around him. Every supernatural sense I've developed over the past weeks screams warnings about his power. I meet him at the elevator, my heart pounding as I see the controlled fury in his ancient eyes. They have my daughter, he says simply. I know. And I know what they've been doing to her. The elevator ride to the pediatric floor passes in tense silence. When the doors open, Gabriel moves with purpose toward Luna's room, ignoring the security guards who seem frozen by his presence. Luna's face transforms when she sees him, weakness replaced by pure joy. Daddy! Gabriel kneels beside her bed, his dangerous composure cracking as he takes in her condition. I'm here, little star. Daddy's here. Mr. Draven. Dr. Bell's voice cuts through the moment like a blade. He stands in the doorway with two security guards, his expression carefully neutral. Visiting hours ended long ago. Gabriel rises slowly, and the temperature in the room seems to drop 10 degrees. Release my daughter. Now. I'm afraid that's not possible. Luna requires specialized care that only our facility can provide. Any attempt to remove her could be fatal. The threat hangs in the air between them, loaded with implications I'm only beginning to understand. The Circle has been using Luna as a hostage, keeping Gabriel's compliance through the most powerful leverage imaginable, a parent's love for their child. But I have something they don't expect. Actually, I say, stepping forward with a thick folder in my hands. I think federal investigators might be very interested in Luna's treatment protocols, especially the experimental medications that aren't approved for pediatric use. Dr. Bell's eyes narrow as he focuses on me for the first time. Nurse Collins. I thought we had an understanding. We did, but circumstances have changed. I hand the folder to Gabriel, who opens it to reveal everything I've gathered over the past month. Financial records, medication logs, patient files that show a pattern of abuse spanning decades. It's enough evidence to destroy the Circle's operation and send every conspirator to prison for life. You have 12 hours, Gabriel tells Dr. Bell, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. Prepare Luna for discharge, or I present this evidence to every relevant authority, mortal and immortal. Dr. Bell's composure finally cracks, revealing something inhuman beneath the civilized facade. You don't understand the forces you're challenging, Draven. The Circle has resources. The Circle is finished, Gabriel interrupts, and if any harm comes to my daughter or to Nurse Collins, I will personally ensure that your deaths are neither quick nor merciful. As we leave the hospital with Luna safely in Gabriel's arms, I catch sight of our reflection in the glass doors. A vampire king, a sick child, and a nurse who chose to fight impossible odds because it was the right thing to do. We look like an unlikely family, bound together by love and defiance. The war isn't over yet, but tonight, we've won an important battle. The Circle's hold on Luna is broken, and their secrets are no longer safe. As Gabriel's car disappears into the New Orleans night, Luna's small hand pressed against the window in a goodbye wave, I feel something settle in my chest, a sense of purpose I've never experienced before. I have 12 hours to prepare for whatever comes next, but for the first time since this nightmare began, I'm not afraid. I'm ready. The evidence is gathered, the battle lines are drawn, and somewhere in the darkness, federal investigators are about to receive the most important phone call of their careers. The Crimson Circle has ruled New Orleans from the shadows for over a century, but their reign of terror is about to end. With the flash drive of evidence secure in my pocket, I leave the hospital in the dead of night, my footsteps echoing through empty corridors that will never feel the same. I have the proof needed to destroy them, documented evidence of crimes that span decades and touch every level of their operation. Now comes the most dangerous part. The federal building on Poydras Street rises like a monolith against the pre-dawn sky, its windows dark except for a few scattered offices where dedicated agents work through the night. I park across the street and sit for a moment, my hands trembling as I grip the steering wheel. The flash drive feels like it's burning a hole in my pocket. Such a small thing to contain so much destruction. Gabriel waits for me in the shadows between two parked cars, Luna sleeping peacefully in his arms. She looks healthier already, away from whatever cocktail of medications the Circle had been feeding her. Her color is better, and she's breathing easier. Just seeing her improvement strengthens my resolve. The investigators are waiting on the 7th floor, Gabriel says quietly. Agent Sarah Chen, FBI Financial Crimes Division, Agent Michael Torres, DEA Medical Fraud Unit. They've been tracking suspicious activity at hospitals throughout the Gulf Coast for months. I nod, checking my watch. 3:15 a.m. In a few hours, the morning shift will arrive at St. Elysium to discover that their carefully constructed world is about to collapse. What about Dr. Bell? The other Circle members? Gabriel's smile has no warmth in it. They're contained. The Vampire Council has been waiting centuries for enough evidence to act against rogue elements. Your documentation provides the legal framework they need. The federal building's lobby is eerily quiet at this hour, staffed by a single security guard who waves me through after checking my ID against a visitor's list. The elevator carries me up to the 7th floor, where the fluorescent lights buzz with the same frequency as the hospital corridors I know so well. Agent Chen meets me at the elevator doors. A small, intense woman with sharp eyes and an expression that suggests she's seen enough corruption to last several lifetimes. Agent Torres stands beside her, tall and broad-shouldered, with the kind of steady presence that immediately puts people at ease. Ms. Collins, Agent Chen says, we understand you have information about irregularities at St. Elysium Hospital. I follow them to a conference room where recording equipment waits on a polished table. The familiar institutional setting helps calm my nerves. This is the kind of environment where facts matter more than fear, where evidence speaks louder than threats. Before we begin, I say, settling into a chair across from them, you need to understand that what I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but I have documentation for every claim I'm making. Agent Torres activates the recording equipment. Why don't you start from the beginning? For the next hour, I lay out everything: the reused surgical instruments, the missing blood products, the unauthorized procedures, the financial discrepancies. I show them patient files that document unexplained deaths, medication logs that reveal experimental drugs being used without consent, and financial records that trace millions of dollars flowing into untraceable accounts. Agent Chen's expression grows darker with each revelation. These allegations, if proven, represent violations of federal healthcare regulations, patient safety laws, financial crime statutes. There's more, I interrupt, pulling out the flash drive. This contains encrypted files from Dr. Bell's personal computer system, financial records, correspondence with offshore accounts, patient data that's been falsified to hide the true scope of what they've been doing. Agent Torres takes the drive, turning it over in his hands like it might explode. How did you obtain this? Let's say I had help from someone with access. The agents exchange glances. They're clearly wondering about my sources, about how a staff nurse managed to penetrate what appears to be a sophisticated criminal conspiracy. But they're also professionals who understand that sometimes the best evidence comes from unexpected places. Ms. Collins, Agent Chen says carefully, these are serious allegations against prominent members of the medical community. Dr. Victor Bell has an impeccable reputation, connections throughout the city's power structure. If we move forward with this investigation, you'll be under intense scrutiny. I understand the risks, but I've seen what they're doing to patients, how they're using human suffering for profit. I can't stand by and let it continue. Agent Torres leans forward, his voice gentle but probing. In your statement, you mention unusual behavior from hospital staff, procedures conducted at odd hours, patients who arrive without proper documentation. Can you be more specific about what you observed? This is the moment I've been dreading. How do I tell federal investigators that the hospital is being run by vampires without sounding completely insane? How do I explain that the unusual behavior includes superhuman strength, the ability to move silently through corridors, and eyes that glow red in fluorescent light? The staff who work the night shift, they're different from the day shift personnel. They move differently, react differently to situations. I've seen them perform procedures that should be impossible without proper equipment or lighting. And the patients they bring in, some of them, recover from injuries that should be fatal, while others deteriorate despite receiving what appears to be appropriate care. Agent Chen makes notes on a legal pad. Different how, specifically? Faster reflexes, enhanced strength. They seem to see perfectly in low-light conditions. And I take a breath, knowing how this will sound. I've never seen any of them eat or drink during their shifts. Never seen them take breaks. Never witnessed normal human fatigue patterns. The agents maintain professional expressions, but I can see skepticism creeping into their eyes. They're trained to deal with financial crimes and regulatory violations, not supernatural conspiracies. We'll need to verify all of this through official channels, Agent Torres says diplomatically. Medical board investigations, financial audits, interviews with other staff members and patients. That's fine, but you need to move quickly. Now that I've come forward, the circle, the people running this operation won't hesitate to eliminate evidence or witnesses. As if summoned by my words, the lights in the conference room flicker. The fluorescent tubes dim for a moment, casting strange shadows across the walls. Agent Chen glances up with mild annoyance, but Agent Torres frowns, his hand moving instinctively toward his service weapon. Building's old, Agent Chen says, but her voice carries a note of uncertainty. The temperature drops noticeably. My breath begins to mist in the suddenly frigid air, and I catch a familiar metallic scent that makes my skin crawl with recognition. Somewhere in the building, something inhuman prowls the corridors. They're here, I whisper. Agent Torres stands, his weapon now drawn. Who's here? The conference room door explodes inward, slamming against the wall with enough force to crack the drywall. Dr. Bell steps through the opening, no longer bothering to maintain his human facade. His eyes burn like coals in the artificial light, and his movements carry the predatory grace I've learned to recognize in true predators. Agent Chen, Agent Torres. His voice carries centuries of authority and barely contained hunger. I believe you have something that belongs to me. Agent Chen scrambles for her weapon, but Bell moves faster than human reflexes can track. One moment he's standing in the doorway, the next he's beside her chair, his pale hand wrapped around her wrist with enough pressure to make her gasp. Federal agents, he says conversationally, as if discussing the weather. How wonderfully official, but I'm afraid this investigation ends here. Let her go, Agent Torres shouts, his weapon trained on Bell's center mass. Bell laughs, a sound like breaking glass. Bullets, Agent Torres? How charmingly old-fashioned. But before he can move, another figure appears in the doorway. Gabriel Draven fills the frame like an avenging angel, his presence making the air itself seem to vibrate with power. The temperature drops even further, and I can see frost forming on the conference table. Release them, Bell, Gabriel says quietly. Your quarrel is with me. Dr. Bell's grip on Agent Chen tightens, and I hear her suppress a cry of pain. The Vampire King, come to rescue his mortal allies. How unexpectedly sentimental of you. The circle's reign ends tonight, Gabriel replies, stepping into the room. The council has reviewed the evidence. Your operations are terminated. Evidence gathered by breaking into private systems, stealing confidential files. Bell's free hand gestures toward the flash drive on the conference table. Hardly admissible in any court of law. Agent Torres keeps his weapon trained on Bell, though I can see confusion in his eyes as he tries to process what he's hearing. Vampires, councils, supernatural politics playing out in a federal conference room at 4 a.m. The mortal courts will have their evidence, Gabriel says. But the council requires no legal precedents for justice. Bell's composure finally cracks completely. With inhuman speed, he releases Agent Chen and lunges toward the table where the flash drive sits. But I'm already moving. My months of supernatural education paying off as I snatch the device and roll away from his grasping fingers. Raine! Gabriel's voice cuts through the chaos. Now! I place the flash drive on the conference table with deliberate ceremony, a simple act that represents immense courage and defiance. The air in the room becomes electric with tension. Agent Chen and Agent Torres watch with expressions of intense focus, their initial skepticism replaced by growing understanding of the stakes involved. Dr. Bell's composure finally cracks completely, his carefully maintained human mask falling away to reveal something ancient and desperate. You have no idea what you've done, Bell snarls, his fangs fully visible now. The Circle has protected this city for over a century. We've maintained order, prevented chaos. By feeding on innocent people, I interrupt, my voice steady despite the supernatural tension crackling around us. By turning a hospital into a hunting ground. Gabriel moves closer to Bell, and the fluorescent lights flicker more violently. The evidence speaks clearly. Financial crimes, medical violations, patient abuse spanning decades. The mortal authorities will handle the legal aspects. The council will address the supernatural violations. Agent Chen slowly reaches for the flash drive, her movements careful and deliberate. This contains everything? Patient files, financial records, correspondence with offshore accounts, medication protocols that violate every ethical standard in modern medicine. I confirm. Enough to shut down the operation and prosecute everyone involved. Bell's eyes blaze with fury as he watches his empire crumble. You think this ends anything? The Circle has resources throughout the city. Connections you can't imagine? Had. Gabriel corrects softly. Past tense. The Council moved against all Circle assets at dawn. Your conspirators are being held for judgment. Your financial accounts frozen. Your network dismantled piece by piece. The reality of his defeat settles over Bell like a physical weight. For the first time since I've known him, he looks genuinely afraid. Gabriel, we can negotiate. Surely some arrangement. You used my daughter as leverage, Gabriel says, his voice carrying the chill of winter storms. You poisoned her, kept her weak and dependent, held her hostage to ensure my compliance. There is no arrangement for that. Agent Torres keeps his weapon steady, though I can see his mind struggling to process the supernatural elements of what he's witnessing. Ms. Collins, are you saying this man, Dr. Bell, he's actually a vampire? I confirm. Part of a criminal organization that's been using St. Elysium Hospital as a feeding ground for decades. The evidence on that drive will show financial crimes and medical violations, but the full truth is even darker. Agent Chen inserts the flash drive into her laptop, and files begin cascading across the screen. Patient records, financial transfers, correspondence that reveals the scope of the conspiracy. Her expression grows grimmer with each revelation. Jesus, she breathes. The blood bank discrepancies alone. We're talking about thousands of units over the past 5 years. Consumed, not sold. Gabriel clarifies, though they did establish a profitable side business selling excess inventory to other supernatural communities. Bell makes one final desperate move, lunging toward the conference room window with inhuman speed. But Gabriel is faster, intercepting him mid-leap and slamming him against the wall with enough force to crack the drywall. Your hunting days are over, Gabriel says quietly, his hand around Bell's throat. The question is whether you face council justice or mortal prosecution first. Both, Agent Torres says firmly, finally holstering his weapon as the immediate threat passes. Federal charges for the financial crimes and regulatory violations, whatever. Other jurisdiction wants to handle the supernatural aspects. The next hours pass in a blur of official statements, evidence cataloging, and coordination between agencies I never knew existed. As dawn breaks over New Orleans, federal agents swarm St. Elysium Hospital, armed with warrants and evidence that will dismantle the Circle's operation piece by piece. I watch from Gabriel's estate as news vans gather outside the hospital, reporters scrambling to understand the breaking story of medical fraud and patient abuse at one of the city's most respected institutions. They'll never know the full truth. The supernatural elements will remain classified, handled by agencies that officially don't exist. But the patients will be safe. The feeding will stop. The Circle's reign of terror has ended. Luna sits beside me on the garden swing, her color already improving after just one night away from the hospital's experimental medications. She's drawing in a sketch pad Gabriel gave her, her small hands moving with surprising skill across the paper. "What are you drawing, sweetheart?" I ask. She holds up the page and my breath catches. It's a picture of me and Gabriel standing together. But in her child's imagination, we both have wings, radiant, protective wings that shelter a city below us. "Daddy says you gave him back his soul," Luna whispers, her young voice carrying wisdom beyond her years. "He says you helped him remember what it means to protect people instead of just surviving." Gabriel approaches from the house, moving with the fluid grace that no longer frightens me. His pale eyes hold warmth now, a humanity I never expected to see in someone so ancient and powerful. "The council has reached its judgment," he says quietly. "Bell and his conspirators will face supernatural justice, followed by whatever sentences the mortal courts impose. The Circle's assets will be liquidated to compensate victims and their families. And St. Elysium will be rebuilt. Properly this time, with oversight from both human medical boards and council representatives, a place where healing happens without hidden agendas or supernatural predation." I look at Luna's drawing again, at the wings she's given us both. What happens to me now? The federal agents will need my testimony, and after that? "After that, you have choices," Gabriel says, settling onto the swing beside his daughter. "You could return to nursing at a different hospital, start fresh somewhere the Circle's influence never reached, or, his smile carries centuries of experience and hard-won wisdom. "The new St. Elysium will need administrators who understand both human medicine and supernatural realities, people who can ensure that healing happens safely for all patients." The idea takes my breath away. A hospital where vampires and humans can seek treatment without fear, where supernatural ailments can be addressed alongside mundane medical conditions. A place where the knowledge I've gained over these past weeks could actually help people instead of just fighting corruption. I'd be qualified for something like that? "You're the nurse who took on the Crimson Circle armed with nothing but evidence folders and moral courage," Gabriel points out. "I'd say you're uniquely qualified." As the sun climbs higher over New Orleans, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink that seem more beautiful than they did yesterday, I feel something settle in my chest. The fear that's driven me for weeks is finally gone, replaced by something I haven't felt in years: hope. The city spreads below us, familiar and foreign at once. Somewhere in those streets, federal agents are arresting the last Circle conspirators. Somewhere else, supernatural beings are learning that their community will be held to higher standards of conduct. And somewhere, patients who might have become victims will instead receive the healing they need. Luna leans against my shoulder, her drawing complete. In her child's vision, the city below our protective wings is bright and safe, populated by people who can walk the streets without fear of predators disguising themselves as healers. For the first time in 5 centuries, Gabriel tells me later, he feels like he's breathing again instead of just surviving. The weight of watching his daughter suffer, of being unable to challenge the Circle's hold over her care, nearly broke something essential in him. But my evidence, my willingness to risk everything for strangers, reminded him of what it means to protect, rather than simply endure. "You gave me back more than evidence," he says as we watch Luna chase butterflies in the garden. "You gave me back purpose." The irony isn't lost on me. I sought to expose a conspiracy and ended up helping a vampire king rediscover his humanity. I thought I was fighting monsters and discovered I was actually fighting alongside them against something far worse: the corruption of institutions meant to heal and protect. My phone buzzes with a text from Marco. The morning news is calling it the medical fraud case of the century. Think they're understating things a bit. I laugh, typing back. "Just a bit. Coffee later? I have stories to tell." "Always. The usual table will be waiting." As I put my phone away, I realize that for the first time in weeks, I'm looking forward to something as simple as coffee with a friend. The constant vigilance, the fear of supernatural predators lurking in hospital corridors, the weight of carrying secrets that could destroy lives, all of it has lifted, replaced by the clean satisfaction of justice served and wounds beginning to heal. Luna runs up to us, her cheeks flushed with the kind of healthy color I haven't seen since the night I first found her crying in room 314. "Daddy, can Raine come to our house for dinner? I want to show her my room and my books and my music box that plays the pretty song." Gabriel's ancient eyes soften as he looks at his daughter. If she wants to, little star. But remember, Raine has her own home, her own life to return to. Actually, I say, surprised by the words as they leave my mouth, I'd love to see your room, Luna. And maybe we could talk about what the new hospital might look like. A place where little girls never have to be afraid of their medicine. Luna claps her hands with delight, already planning our tour of her domain. But as she skips away to gather her favorite books, Gabriel's expression grows serious. Are you certain about this path? He asks quietly. Building something new with supernatural oversight, bridging worlds that have been separate for centuries. It won't be easy. I think about the evidence folders, about the nights spent documenting violations and fearing for my life, about the patients I failed to protect before I understood what I was fighting. Then I look at Luna, healthy and laughing in the sunlight, and at Gabriel, ancient power tempered by rediscovered compassion. Nothing worthwhile ever is, I reply, but for the first time in my career, I'll be building something instead of just trying to survive within a broken system. The rest of the day passes in planning sessions and phone calls, as federal prosecutors coordinate with supernatural authorities to ensure that justice is served on all levels. By evening, the last of the Circle conspirators are in custody, their supernatural network dismantled, and their human accomplices facing decades in prison. As night falls over New Orleans, Gabriel and I stand on his estate's balcony, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. Somewhere out there, St. Elysium Hospital sits empty and quiet, waiting for the reconstruction that will transform it from a predator's den into a true sanctuary of healing. The council has approved the funding, Gabriel says, handing me a folder thick with architectural plans and medical protocols. Construction begins next month. We'll need staff who understand both worlds, administrators who can navigate supernatural politics alongside medical ethics. I flip through the plans, seeing spaces designed for traditional medical care alongside specialized facilities for supernatural patients. Blood banks with legitimate procurement channels, operating theaters equipped for both human and vampire physiology, recovery rooms where healing can happen without fear or deception. It's beautiful, I breathe, imagining the possibilities. It's your vision, Gabriel corrects. The evidence you gathered, the corruption you exposed, the courage you showed, all of it contributed to this design. The council is calling it Lila's Light Clinic, in honor of what Luna showed us about the power of innocence to inspire change. Luna herself appears in the doorway, already in her pajamas but carrying the drawing she made earlier. I made copies, she announces proudly, handing me a rolled paper. One for you to keep, so you remember that you have wings too. As I unroll the drawing, I see she's added details I missed before. Tiny figures throughout the city below, all safe and happy under our protective wings. Patients leaving the hospital healthy, children playing in parks without fear, families reunited after healing. Thank you, Luna, I say, my voice thick with emotion. I'll treasure this. She hugs me with the fierce affection only children can manage, then skips back into the house to get ready for bed. Gabriel follows her, and I hear their voices through the open windows. A father helping his daughter brush her teeth, reading her a bedtime story, tucking her in with all the tenderness of someone who thought he'd lost the capacity for such gentle moments. When he returns to the balcony, his expression carries a peace I've never seen before. She's been asking about starting school, he says. Real school, with other children. Before, I was too afraid to let her have normal experiences. The Circle's hold over her medical care made everything feel like a trap. And now? Now I remember that protection means giving her the chance to live, not just survive. We stand in comfortable silence as the city settles into its nighttime rhythm. In a few hours, I'll return to my apartment to process everything that's happened, to begin planning for a future I never could have imagined. But for now, I'm content to watch the lights below and feel the satisfaction of a job well done. My phone buzzes with a message from Agent Chen. Final arrest made an hour ago. Circle network completely dismantled. Your testimony will be crucial for the prosecution, but you should know. What you did saved lives. Probably hundreds of them. I type back. Just doing my job. Your job was nursing. This was something else entirely. Something heroic. The word sits strangely with me. Heroes exist in stories and movies, not in the mundane world of hospital shifts and evidence folders. But as I look at Luna's drawing of radiant wings protecting a city, I begin to understand that heroism isn't about supernatural powers or dramatic confrontations. It's about choosing to act when inaction would be easier. It's about standing up for people who can't protect themselves. It's about refusing to accept corruption and abuse as the price of maintaining the status quo. I was just a nurse who noticed irregularities and decided to investigate. But sometimes, that's exactly what the world needs. Ordinary people who choose to be extraordinary when circumstances demand it. Gabriel rejoins me on the balcony, carrying 2 cups of coffee that smell like Marco's perfect dark roast. He sends this blend especially for Luna, Gabriel explains. Says every child should grow up knowing what good coffee smells like, even if they can't drink it yet. Marco's a good man, I say, accepting the warm cup gratefully. The best, Gabriel agrees. His family has been protecting this city's supernatural community for generations. Not all alliances are forged in crisis. Some are built on decades of mutual respect and shared values. As we sip our coffee in comfortable silence, I think about the network of unlikely allies that made tonight's victory possible. A vampire king seeking redemption through protection rather than power. A baker whose family honor extends to supernatural guardianship. A nurse who stumbled into a conspiracy and chose to fight rather than flee. None of us should have been able to challenge an organization as established and powerful as the Crimson Circle. But together, we found the strength to tear down a century of corruption and build something better in its place. The media will want interviews, Gabriel warns. They'll want to understand how a staff nurse uncovered such an extensive conspiracy. And I'll tell them the truth, that sometimes the people closest to the problem are the first to notice when something's wrong. That institutional corruption relies on everyone assuming someone else will handle it. But not the whole truth. I smile, thinking of the supernatural elements that will remain classified. No, not the whole truth. Some secrets are worth keeping. The night air carries the scent of jasmine from Gabriel's garden, mixed with the distant smell of coffee from Marco's bakery, and the sterile antiseptic odor that still clings to my scrubs. It's a combination that perfectly captures my new reality, a life bridging the ordinary and extraordinary, the mundane and the magical. Luna's window glows softly above us, and I can see her shadow moving as she arranges stuffed animals and books in preparation for dreams that will no longer be haunted by hospital corridors and mysterious medicines. For the first time in her young life, she can sleep without fear. That alone makes everything worthwhile. As the night deepens and the city settles into quiet, Gabriel and I make our final plans for the clinic's opening. There will be challenges ahead: federal oversight, medical board inspections, the delicate process of introducing supernatural medical practices to human healthcare systems. But there will also be healing, both for the patients who seek our care and for the community that's been fractured by decades of predatory exploitation. I should go, I finally say, though I'm reluctant to leave this peaceful moment. Gabriel nods. Tomorrow begins a new chapter for all of us. Rest well, Raine Collins. You've earned it. As I drive through the quiet streets of New Orleans, I carry with me Luna's drawing and the weight of possibilities ahead. The woman who entered St. Elysium Hospital 3 years ago was content to work within a system she didn't fully understand. The woman driving home tonight helped dismantle that system and build something better in its place. My apartment feels different when I finally close the door behind me, smaller somehow, as if my perspective has expanded beyond its walls. I spread Luna's drawing on my kitchen table next to the original evidence folders, creating a visual representation of the journey from corruption to hope. In a few hours, the sun will rise on a New Orleans free from the Crimson Circle's influence. Somewhere in the city, federal prosecutors are building cases that will ensure the guilty face justice. Somewhere else, supernatural authorities are establishing new protocols to prevent future abuses. And somewhere, a little girl sleeps peacefully in her father's house, dreaming of a world where hospitals are places of healing rather than hunting grounds for ancient predators. As I finally prepare for sleep, I catch sight of my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I look tired but peaceful, marked by everything I've witnessed but not broken by it. The wings Luna drew are invisible, of course, but I carry their protection with me, the knowledge that when faced with impossible odds, ordinary people can choose to do extraordinary things. Tomorrow, I'll begin planning for Lila's Light Clinic, where humans and supernatural beings can seek healing without fear. Tonight, I'll dream of children playing safely, of patients receiving the care they need, of a city where the vulnerable are protected rather than exploited. For the first time in centuries, the vampire king breathes like a man again. For the first time in my career, I sleep like someone who's made a real difference. The war for New Orleans' soul is won, but the work of healing has only just begun.